And then now we have the news from our Tom Pelissero saying the NFL and the NFLPA are in talks about potentially shortening the preseason from 4 games potentially down to only 2 games. So that got us thinking about the last time we had a shortened offseason. You think about the 2011 offseason where we had the lockout and the importance of getting off to a good start. You see the numbers there at the top. If you're 3-1 or 4-0, you've got a really good shot of making the postseason. 8 of those 12 teams made it. But then on the bottom, if you're under 500, only 1 team went on to make the postseason after starting under 500 in their first 4 games. And that team, ironically, was Tim Tebow's Denver Broncos. So, Buck, if you look at this situation that we find ourselves in, no joint practices, potentially shortening the preseason down to 2 games, what needs to happen for teams to avoid that disastrous start?
Oh, I think it comes down to a couple of things. Veteran players and veteran leadership. Meaning that when you have a team that has veteran leaders that understand the system that you employ, they're going to have an advantage because they know it. They're able to play fast and free. Then it just becomes a game of execution. And the continuity between having veteran leadership, meaning coaches that have been there for a while, coaches that have put in their schemes, everyone knows clearly what they're doing. Well, those teams are at an advantage when they start the regular season. Not a lot of new learning, just about execution. If you keep it simple and then evolve from that point, you can get off to a fast start in the first quarter, and that will set you up to make a really deep playoff run.
Yeah, you use the word execution. I also think of the word communication and how important that is for teams to gel and get on the same page. And the 2 position groups that stand out to me, the offensive line. So if you've got some continuity on that offensive line, they already know how to communicate with one another. You can hit the ground running. The other thing I would say is the DB room. Because in the secondary, as you know, Buck, there's a lot of communication that takes place back there. So if you've got new secondary coaches, a bunch of new players in the secondary, the same thing along the offensive line, that to me is going to be a very big challenge for teams in that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be a big challenge for teams in those spots. I think the big thing will be coaches and their adaptability and flexibility. Coaches have had all this time off. Normally when you have a lot of time off, you want to put in more schemes, more things. The teams that will hit the ground running will be the teams that are a little more simple when it comes to how they play, because their players will be able to just focus on execution as opposed to all the communication and learning that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think continuity is going to be big for these teams to get off to a big start. Again, you don't have to win the Super Bowl in the first 4 games. You just can't knock yourself out of contention, so you got to survive. If you can get to 2-2, then you've got some time there to get things figured out. All right, so here's what we've done. We've taken our researcher, Jack, who's the best in the business, and had him look at the 40 times for every team and 11 personnel for the upcoming season. They're 40 times based off the combine, their pro day, and in a few instances, we actually had to estimate the 40s. But when you combine that, these are the 5 fastest teams in 11 personnel in the NFL. And Bucky, I don't think there's any surprise to see the second fastest team in that personnel group is the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is a team that people have been trying to emulate and copy around the league because of that speed. But what type of impact does that speed have on a game?
Man, it scares you. It scares you when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, because when you're a defensive coordinator, the first thing that you do when it comes to the scouting report, you're trying to assess where the weapons are. Who are the guys that can make the big plays? Who are the guys that can impact the game? Well, when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, because they have speed everywhere, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce, they have so many explosive weapons that you really don't know how to prepare for them. Because the first thing you want to do is you can't let the ball fly over your head, because the vertical passing game is the quickest way to lose. But they're also fast enough on horizontal plays, the crossing routes, they can run away from you. And when you have a quarterback like Pat Mahomes, whose range is unlimited, it really challenges the defensive coordinator to come up with a plan to slow those guys down.
Yeah, I've called the Charger games for the last 2 years, so I've seen a bunch of the Chiefs in person, and the things that stick out to me, you talk about the vertical speed, the horizontal speed, but that fear that exists. So many times you see 3rd and 6, you concede first downs because you're worried about touchdowns. So think about how easy that makes it on your quarterback. And then also Mahomes with his scrambling ability, their ability to run everybody off, and then he can take off and run for first downs as well. So that speed has an impact in several areas there for the Kansas City Chiefs. But we saw some other teams on that list there, the top 5 fastest, and I think a couple might surprise some people, including the Texans. Very controversial they move on from DeAndre Hopkins, but Buck, they've made a move towards speed, and they have it in a big way.
They do have it in a big way. And I think this is going to make their offense a better offense. And that's not being disrespectful to DeAndre Hopkins, a 3-time All-Pro player. But what they've done is they've surrounded Deshaun Watson with a track team. 3 guys with 4.4 speed. When you go looking at Brandon Cooks, Kenny Stills, Will Fuller, those guys have combined for 57 plays of at least 40 yards. That is ridiculous production on the perimeter. When you throw in Randall Cobb, who can scoot as a catch and run specialist, Deshaun Watson now just has to be a distributor, get the ball in the hands of the playmakers and let them work. I think you're going to see a scarier offense in Houston with all the speed that they have on the perimeter.
Yeah, and I mentioned it with Mahomes, also with Watson. Watson is a fantastic athlete too, so all that speed's going to press everything down the field. He can buy time with his athleticism to hit the home run. He can also take off and go because there's going to be a lot of space for him to move. So it's going to be a different Texans offense, but should be fun to watch. The team at the very top, though, of that list was the Giants, the fastest team in the NFL in 11 personnel. And the reason for that, really because the tight end. You see Evan Ingram there with the 4.42. That's what keeps that average all the way down. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, we know about his big-time home run speed. But I don't think if you polled the average fan, they would think of the Giants as the fastest team in the NFL. But that's exciting for a young quarterback in Daniel Jones. If they can keep Evan Ingram healthy, he missed too much time last year, but if they can keep him for a full season, I think this Giants offense has a chance to be very dynamic, very explosive.
Yeah, I think they have an opportunity to be very explosive. And the key to it will be spreading the field. Because of all that speed and explosiveness, they now can create opportunities for their most explosive player, Saquon Barkley, to not only make plays as a runner, but as a receiver. I think Daniel Jones is going to lead a much improved New York Giants offense.
Now, I do need to mention, look, there's a difference between time speed and play speed. There's several teams that aren't going to show up on this list, but are plenty fast because they have play speed. In fact, we're going to talk about the 5 slowest teams a little bit later on in the show, and that includes a couple playoff teams. So how do they do it? How do they get around the fact that they aren't, the fastest team on the clock? We'll discuss that a little bit later on in the show.
Oh, we're talking about the most explosive offensive weapons. And I'm going to start at number 5, Saquon Barkley. That guy mentioned playing for the Giants that should thrive in that offense. Well, he is going to kill it because, look, DJ, in just 2 seasons, he has 35 plays of at least 20 yards, 14 plays of 40 yards or more. He is an explosive weapon that can't be contained. Next, how about George Kittle at number 4? Since 2018, George Kittle has 1,541 yards after catch. That is the second most in the National Football League. Big, fast, and physical, breaks tackles, can take it the distance. He is an explosive player that you can't defend. At 3, Tyreek Hill. And I know what you're saying. He should be at the top of the list. Didn't have a great 2019 campaign, so I dropped him. But since he entered the league in 2016, 27 plays of 40-plus yards. This guy's a big play waiting to happen. He can score from anywhere on the field.
Yeah, you say that. I think of the basketball analogy where you talk about a guy like Steph Curry. Like, where's his range? When he enters the gym, that's where his range starts. Where can Tyreek Hill score from? Yeah, as soon as he steps on the grass, he's capable of scoring from anywhere. That's a pretty good list, Buck. I want to see who's ahead of these guys.
It's funny that you brought up Golden State because I used to love them when they were Run TMC, where CMC is now on the list. At 2, Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is in 2 clubs that are hard to get into. 1,000 rushing, receiving, and then 1,100 rushing and receptions. He is a terrific playmaker, a guy that can get it done inside or outside the backfield. That's why he's there. But number 1, your reigning MVP, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is a special player. 3,000 passing yards, 1,000 rushing yards. He had 47 runs of 10 yards or more. He joined Steve Young and Cam Newton as the only quarterback to have 35 passing touchdowns, and 7 or more rushing touchdowns. Fantastic athlete. You talk about being able to score from anywhere. Lamar Jackson does it because he touched the ball on every play.
Play a little better or worse in the NFC South, and we talked about them being in 12 personnel down in Tampa. So I'll start with them. And this team, look, they're going to be better. They're going to be a better team in this upcoming season than they were last year. Obviously, you bring in a Hall of Fame quarterback like Tom Brady. You get Rob Gronkowski out of retirement. And I think Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield are going to be immediate impact players as rookies, one at tackle and one in the backfield. And this This team, Buck, I know Brady and what he brings, the leadership, we've talked about it, elevating the whole organization. But I keep an eye on O.J. Howard. His career has not lived up to what it should have been based off what he was at Alabama. I think this is a breakout year for him. And they're going to be in a lot of 12 personnel. He's going to be a guy that's going to have a big-time year.
Yeah, he should have a big-time year, work in the middle of the field. They have everything that you want on offense. It comes down to how Tom Brady plays. We'll see how the 40-plus-year-old quarterback is able to get it done. I'm going to deal with the New Orleans Saints, and I just think the Saints have gotten better. And even though they have an aging quarterback in Drew Brees, I just believe this offense is even better this time around. And part of that is because Emmanuel Sanders comes over from the San Francisco 49ers to give them a dynamic number 2 receiver. Last year, this offense was all about Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is a dominant player. He's a one-man gang. He was able to do it by himself. But now you give him a complimentary player who's an outstanding route runner, a guy that can get open. So now Drew Brees can work both sides of the field and still give the ball to Alvin Kamara. I just think offensively, I don't know how you're going to slow down the New Orleans Saints. I think they are just a team that continues to get better and better each year.
I think it's the deepest roster in the National Football League. They are absolutely loaded on paper. Now they got to go put it back on the field. All right, the Carolina Panthers, you want to talk about turnover and change. I don't know if anybody's had more turnover and change in the organization than the Panthers. Obviously, you start at the top there with the coaching staff, with Matt Rule bringing over Joe Brady from LSU. You have the change at the quarterback, out with Cam Newton, in with Teddy Bridgewater. Robbie Anderson's going to add some real speed there, but a lot of changes. Big loss with Luke Kuechly on that other column as well. So just a totally different group. I'm going to say this team, at least in the short term, this year is going to be worse. This is Matt Rule's kind of history. Is he takes it slow, he does it the right way, so you might have some growing pains early on. And when I look at this offensive line, Teddy Bridgewater went from playing those few games last year behind that Saints offensive line, which is outstanding. This is not the same talent here in Carolina. I think it's going to be a rough stretch for them based on their inability to protect the quarterback, Buck.
Yeah, you have so many people going through learning curves. You have Joe Brady learning from the college game to the pro game. You have Phil Snow on the defense side of the ball doing the same. It just may take a while for Matt Rule to kind of get his program going, but we know he's a proven winner. We'll see if he can get it done. I'm going down to Atlanta. The Atlanta Falcons have gotten better, and I know we love to talk about this stat that they may have 11 former first-rounders in their starting rotation. But it's one guy that I'm really keeping an eye on, and that is the running back, Todd Gurley. A lot has been made about the way Todd Gurley's tenure ended in L.A. Is he hurt? Has he lost a step? Can he get it done? I'm confident that this is a better offense for him to play in, not only schematically, but just what he brings with all the weapons that they have on the outside. I'm confident in saying Todd Gurley's an upgrade over Devontae Freeman, and I think we're going to see the difference later in games. When the Falcons need to salt it away, Todd Gurley's going to be able to get it done. Dynamic playmaker behind that offensive line that is also better.